Election time, John's on his way, but we should probably get started. Roll call.
Vasconcelos,
Here.
Boziger, here. Carlson, here. Cunningham, on his way.
On his way.
Brigadier General Donellan,
Here.
Angelis, Westergaard, here. Agent, Willits, we have a quorum.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. Well, every airport commission meeting, well, maybe not every airport commission meeting, but a number of airport commission meetings, I like to recognize our team or other team members at the airport who have done an outstanding job. And I don't think that we've really talked about it at Airport Commission, but we had a citywide innovation challenge. And I am not at all surprised that with our outstanding team, the airport submitted the most ideas and had the most ideas implemented from the innovation challenge. And some of them are more lengthy and will take time to implement. Some of them are quick wins. And so I wanted to recognize our team for submitting that many ideas and suggestions. We had Jen Hoffman, who is sadly not here because she's in Mexico today. I'm sure she would much rather be here with us. But she's on vacation. She won an award for submitting the most ideas. The airport itself won an award for implementing the most ideas. Some examples of some of the things that we've implemented or are in the process of implementing are water bottle refill stations right past security screening. So we do have some throughout the terminal, but we don't have them in all locations. So that was one suggestion that came out. And then some, they're called circadian lights that will actually help people who are working in the night shift feel a little bit more vibrant and awake and help them with their sleep and rhythm patterns. I think Hannah actually suggested that one. She's here as well. But I want to recognize and invite up Addison and Casey. And I would invite Jen, but she's in Mexico. I did invite Jen, but she went to Mexico instead. So I want to recognize them with this award, and apologies that this has to be plugged in to work, but it is actually a floating light bulb. So it's pretty cool. Get with me after and we'll talk about how we're going to divide it, where we're going to store it. All right.
Thank you.
Great job. Mr. Chair, would you like me to continue with the director's report?
Do we need to
no,
approve the
sorry.
minutes first? Yeah.
Yes, back to you.
Okay. We have one change just to recognize that Kelly Fleming was here last week, or last month rather. But with that change, do I have a motion to?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes from last month.
A second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Now,
All right. Good morning again. We always start our commission director's report off with runway closures because I think this is an issue that's important to everyone. I've not included in this one, and I don't think we'll include going forward unless a member of the commission is really like to know when we close the runway for routine maintenance for light repairs, for light maintenance rather. But we did have some snow removal related closures this month, which is not surprising, on the 14th and the 21st, but we did not ever actually close. We closed the runways, alternating closures, but did not close the airfield. We're also continuing, as you drove in, you probably saw this, our parking garage is really starting to take shape now. We're on level 5 and we're continuing with pouring the columns. The vehicle ramp is in process and the framing is also going up. The employee garage is also moving forward. This project is a little bit further behind the other project, but you can see, again, it is starting to take shape. We have poured the floor, the grade, and it's cured. And now we're installing some walls on the stairs and elevators. That will be done this fall. And finally, our security checkpoint expansion is complete. We opened the additional lane back in November, just before Thanksgiving, but we still had work on the exit lane to do and relocating the TSA supervisors and our law enforcement offices. So a few other things that we're doing, but we just have a few other minor things that we're taking care of. And it doesn't feel like spring today, but spring will be here before we know it, and spring break will be here shortly. And we are expecting a record number of passengers. Feels like I say that all the time, but it is. So schools are generally on vacation that third week in March, and we are anticipating that we will have sufficient parking. Last year, if you remember, we were really concerned about whether or not we would have enough parking, but since that time, we've added in ballet, which has added a couple hundred spaces, and we've also added 340 spaces, new spaces to the lot, and then maximize the lot as well. So we're optimistic that we'll have enough parking. And we have talked before about the realignment of the runway ends at the airfield. This was something that came out of our master plan and also part of the recommendations from the runway safety action team. And to do that, we have to do an environmental assessment. We're targeting, I believe, April 17th, but that is contingent upon FAA approval of this date and not having any additional comments or concerns on the environmental document. So that will be moving forward as well. And then more awards and recognitions, and maybe I'll just ask Jill to stand up, and Brian, I don't know, did Brian come in or is Brian off working? He's, okay, he's too busy working.
Jill's in the conference down in California.
Oh, I thought I saw Jill this morning. Okay, so they're not here because they're working. But Jill and Brian were both recognized with TSA Partnership Awards, and we have a very positive working relationship with TSA, which is not something that you see at every airport. So I'm really grateful for that. They were recognized for their work. Jill was recognized for her work on the security checkpoint expansion and just the way that she handled that and getting the TSA offices relocated. And then Brian was recognized for all of his work on the baggage handling system. You know, things that we don't think about when they work well, and then when they don't work, it's all we think about. So congratulations and a huge thanks to Jill and Brian. January employments were up 24% compared to last year, which we were still down a little bit last year, but we're up 10% over 2020, which was shaping up to be our fastest year of growth ever. And since it's the first month, it's also up 10% year to date. So operating revenue is also up, and I'll see if I can move this so we can actually see the change there. It's up pretty substantially, up 20%, 21% year to date. Expenses are also up. Some of the categories where it's up is structural and plumbing. It's because just different things that we're doing and timing of repairs. So I don't think that there's anything unusual to report there or substantial to report at this time on our expenses either. These are our quarterly reports that we get from our consultant that looks at our air traffic and helps us analyze it. Capacity was up 7%, so we're back up to about an 83% load factor, which is pretty close to where we were pre-pandemic. And our top 20 origin and destinations remain pretty stable. The top 16 of the 20 have seen increases in passenger travel. Burbank saw the largest increase by far, and that's because we have new nonstop service to Burbank. So, market share, the market continues to be highly segmented, which is great for the consumer. It means we have more competition. Alaska Airlines is continues to be our largest carrier, and Alaska and Delta both increased their market share by a point. And then United and American also. Obviously, they lost some market share. Our forward-looking schedule, we've changed this chart a little bit, so it looks a little different than it has in the past. We're looking at the number of weekly flights and then the weekly seats, because the seats probably give us a better sense of the actual change and the actual potential increase in passengers. So
Kind of hard to read those numbers, Mr. Chair.
I agree. I don't love it as much as the previous way. So I think we're going to ask them to go back to reporting it with the percentage rather than the number of seats. I do understand why why they want to show seats, because that's the real potential and the real number, but I agree with you. The percentage, I think, probably works better. The seats per capita comparison, again, this is a number that we look at pretty regularly compared to our peers. We're substantially higher seats per capita, with Spokane, Charleston, and Reno having more seats per capita. And we were the second largest airport in terms of O&D passengers compared to the peer group that we selected, second only to Charleston. And if you remember, we actually changed this peer group a few years ago because we had outgrown our previous peer set. And so we'll continue to monitor that and determine if these are still the right, if this is still the right peer group or not. Pandemic changed things a bit. Year over year comparison, our passengers are up 35% and seats are up 7%. And again, just remember that, last year our passengers were artificially low because we're still recovering from the pandemic. We tend to compare it more to 2019, 9% compared to 2019. So again, still a much faster recovery probably than the rest of the country. And then we do have a presentation coming up on general aviation. And so I thought it might be good to, just before we switch over to that next presentation, for me to highlight some of the things that are happening in Boise related to GA, because we don't always talk about it. This is an airport diagram. It's a little bit of an eye chart probably from where you're sitting, but it does show all of the GA facilities that we have, tenant and support facilities at the airport. This is a list of our current hangar inventory. You can see we have some corporate hangars, we have some FBOs, we have shade hangars, T hangars, so quite a mix. And I'm going to move this again so we can. Who's wanting me to join the audio, which I don't want to do. Can't really. Now I've done it. Oh, can you see the total on that screen? On my screen, you can't see it. Sorry. So you can see we have over 700,000 square feet of GA space. So we have some things that are coming up in the near term. Jackson Jet Center is proposing to construct a new 39,000 square foot hangar. We have space available on Commerce Avenue for two 15,000 square foot hangars. We are in negotiations for land leases with some tenants up for that. And then we have one additional hangar after that, after an existing lease expires. So we have a lease that I won't say which one it is, I can't remember, but it's non-aeronautical. It expires in 2024. And when that expires, we'll be able to open up that area for even more for GA development. And then we have an area basically across the taxiway from SkyWest where Burrell Group has leased 4 acres specifically for aviation development and GA corporate development. And then we have the potential future site. This came out of our master plan when Orchard was realigned, that we will have more space available for GA over there, private hangars. So We're not sure of the timing of the relocation of Orchard project, but Orchard Street, but that's another potential area for future GA development. Some of the things that we're working on related to GA is we're reviewing the structure of the GA leases to make sure that we have all of the required terms in it required by FAA. We're doing a complete inventory. We're looking at the monthly rent for T hangers and shade hangers, evaluating the waiting list and any additional facilities planned. We're looking at also what other airports are doing to determine, how other similar size airports are handling and accommodating GA aircraft. So with that concludes my report.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick one. Rebecca, are the deployments up to this one as well?
Yes.
I have one.
Yes.
Would you mind outlining, once the new public parking garage is completed, how will the long-term and short-term spaces, reserved parking be allocated between the new facility and the existing garages?
So short-term and reserve will stay where it is. The new garage will be all long-term.
Okay, and the existing long-term will stay long-term?
Yes.
Seems like the short-term is very full. Do we not need more?
I think
Space.
short-term is full because people are parking in there long-term
Yeah.
because they can't get into the regular garage. So, I mean, we'll evaluate it, and if we need to add additional space to short-term, we can. I think we'll find that people are just parking in short-term because they get it. Oh my goodness. I don't want to go to the economy lot and then they park in
Right.
short-term.
Thank you.
Rebecca, the Orchard Street realignment, do you have any insight or update from ACHD on the status of that?
We talked to them and it was on the plan. I'm looking at Amy because she will remember. I don't remember. It was on the plan and it's been delayed.
It was supposed to be around the 2020 time period, but they're reevaluating. They're in the midst of doing their updating their 5-year priorities.
There's some environmental out there that needs to be mediated, and I think that's the sticking point is who's gonna pay for that? How much is it gonna cost? So it makes it more complicated than just moving the road. Right.
Okay, thank you. Next item, commissioners' comments. Meg?
Well, it's good to be here. Last month I was on the legendary Rhythm and Blues cruise in the West Caribbean, so that was a nice option for me. It meant flying in and out of Fort Lauderdale on Alaska, which was great. No issues whatsoever, just wonderful. And then I did take a short overnight trip down to Denver and back on United last month for a board meeting. So easy in and out, great service, all flights on time. I wasn't competing with any storms, so I had smooth sailing. So it was great. Happy to be here.
We've also been gone, so apologies for my missing the last couple of meetings, but glad to be back. I was at a flight training a couple of weeks last month, so I took a new job flying for Idaho Power. So my jet for Idaho Power, which I'm really excited about. So I was taking a check ride during the commission meeting last week. So I was successful, and I'm glad to get that.
Congratulations
Yes.
on that new position.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have no comment other than to apologize for being late today. Everyone here made it on time.
Roads were tough today.
Well, no excuse. You all made it, so my apologies.
Very-
Mr. Chairman, I'll just be quick. We're welcoming the Big Sky Conference this weekend over at John's facility, and I know some will be using the airport, so thank you in advance for your welcoming nature teams coming in.
Mr. Chairman, no comments from me tonight.
Well, I flew down to Las Vegas with my wife. I had an investment conference down there. We took Southwest down and Alaska back, and the times were great. just perfect and everything was on time, like you said. So that was good. I guess we're ready for our new business, the Henning.
Morning, everybody. Morning today. So, pleasure being here. I'll do a quick introduction. I think I've got a dozen slides. I don't like giving a long monologue. So please pause with questions if it's at all possible. I think that makes it more interactive. But I'm here for a very specific reason. Some of the local stakeholders said that there was going to be a conversation about general aviation. They reached out to me and said, "Can you come in here?" And why did they reach out to Gamma? I'm going to get into that in a bit. So let's get to the next slide here. What is Gamma? We're a trade association based in Washington, D.C. I get paid by the manufacturers of the aircraft. Business jets, turboprops, rotorcraft, piston engine aircraft, new very exciting electric aircraft that you may be seeing about in the press, and altogether about 150 companies in our membership. We were founded in 1970 and primarily work in Washington, D.C. and in Brussels, Belgium. So again, I'd like to kick off any presentation. Why am I in Boise, Idaho? So the next slide, please.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Henning, are you also representing the new vertical
Yes, ma'am.
airplanes? Because I know they're really growing in New Jersey, New York, and some other short flights. Fascinating.
Yep, about 20 of the companies in our membership are brand new. They're getting into this market with, innovation money, a lot of West Coast money, IT innovation and so forth. We also see a lot of the traditional aircraft manufacturers. There's something there. In the history of aviation, any new evolution, if you look at it, starts with a new engine. And here we are at the precipice of a new engine, electric hybrid. The market will play it out, but lots of work going into that. We started working in that space about 2015.
And follow-up question, I think it has real implications for airport expansion because you don't need runways. You don't need long runways because you're going this way, not that way. For short commuter. I'm not sure what the distance limitation is today, but I'm sure that'll evolve.
Some of the early aircraft, again, it's limited by battery power. You'll see a range of about 200 miles. So enough to, I think that you see a lot of the early work around big cities with congestion problems, but there's other exploration.
Thank you.
So again, why am I here? If you're in aviation, if you're in Boise, I sure hope you know who Ed Stimson is.
Used to serve on the commission.
So I had the pleasure of getting to know Ed Stimson back in the 1990s. He happened to be the chairman of the board of the university I went to, Embry-Riddle University. And I always recall that whenever he was introduced anywhere, to make sure that he reinforced that he was from Boise. So my connection with Ed is twofold. First of all, I met him in school and got to drive him around. He came in just giving a commencement speech. But if you look at the picture there on the right, the very tall gentleman in the far back left, that is our founding board of directors of Gamma back in 1970. Ed was on the staff. Unfortunately, our first president died 4 months after the association was founded. And I believe Ed was in his late 30s and he was given the reins to the organization. He took them and he ran with them and built us into what we are today. So if you talk general aviation in DC, in Montreal, where we do all the international regulations, over in Europe, you know Ed Stimson, and you probably heard about this time called Boise. So just a legend. The word statesman has always been used around him, so that's really it. If you ever do make it into Washington, D.C., go to the Smithsonian. He has the Wright Memorial Trophy. His name is etched right in there. So that's a connection between Gamma and Boise. So if you guys ever want to talk general aviation, just let us know. We'll be here. So my role, I work in policy, but I also do a lot of number stuff. So I'm going to run some numbers. I think the airport director kicked off with that, so we'll continue with that. Stop me anytime. So general aviation, we view ourselves as not the military side, not the commercial airlines, but still an important part of both transportation and many other services. I saw the National Fire Center picture over here on the left side of the room. To us, that's an important component of general aviation. The aircraft being made and used for firefighting, they're made by our members. So with many things, I'm an aviation geek, but our board always tells me many things come down to dollars and cents, economics. So I'll run you through some big picture items when it comes to general aviation's economic impact. Cycle into Idaho specifically, I think go from there. Whoops, too fast, sorry. So this is the history of general aviation. Our members in the past 10 years made about $200 billion worth of business jets, about $17 billion worth of turboprops. I think it's about $60 billion worth of helicopters. And on the piston side, we churn out about $1 billion of those a year. So it's a real economic contributor just on the manufacturing side. So we're very proud of those numbers. It's a worldwide industry, still very much dominated by US companies, but we sell the aircraft everywhere. Just last week, we came up with the 2022 results. I just used to do a year-over-year overview of how we're doing. Lots of numbers out here. I look at the different types of aircraft, piston, turboprops, piston jets, piston helicopters, and turbines. We never really took a big hit during the slowdowns of the economy back in 2020. There was a brief pause in March, maybe a little bit in April, and then people really pivoted into flying in general aviation. They needed to get around. They were found flying from airlines, and our demand continued to grow. The dip you see there and briefly in the numbers in 2020, that's not demand driven. It was truly supply constraint. Our factories were shut down. People were buying the aircraft like never before. It was a little bit hard to get the parts because of shipping and all the things we experienced. But overall, we're mostly back to where we were at in 2019 as a baseline. Anybody wants to geek out on this? We have the data going back to 1946. I've been meaning to go over to the Smithsonian and grab the data from pre-World War II. It's out there from an association that we used to be part of. And anybody who wants to get into this for studies, please let me know. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, the industry is growing. These are the 5 biggest manufacturers of aircraft, the ones that are publicly traded. This is what their backlogs have done between end of 2019 and end of 2022. If you quickly do the math, through the third quarter, because 2 of them haven't disclosed their financials just yet, we were just north of $61 billion just from these 5 companies in backlog. We make aircraft. These are factories all across America. This is an important industry. Next slide, please. So shifting gears from that, to me, the manufacture of aircraft is very interesting, but the flying, the maintaining, the fund, the operation, the transportation, that's something that we also keep an eye on. About every 4 or 5 years, we have an external group, economists run the numbers, standard modeling. And last time we did it was in 2018, released just early 2020. It takes a while to turn the numbers by PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I'll highlight a couple of data points there. Next slide, please. First, in general aviation, there's some subtle things here before I get into the numbers. There's a direct employment, the people that get a paycheck from the industry. But what we do have compounding effects throughout the economy. The people that can get around, what people do when they earn a paycheck from general aviation, go buy things. So the numbers up here represent that more complex. The direct, indirect, induced, and enabled. I'm not an economist, so please don't ask me to explain any of those terms, but they're generally known. So 273,500 full-time and part-time workers directly in the industry across America. That's anything from the FBO down the street to the manufacturing, to the maintainer, to various other people. Yeah, you get that up to the full impacts. There's 1.2 million jobs across America that are really impacted. Overall economic input, $247 billion. And at the national level, if you have a GA job locally, it tends to turn into about 3.3 jobs locally around the area. Thanks, please. The report that I had the link in there also does state level analysis. This is the Idaho breakout. I'm sure the airport here, the local airport authority also takes it even further with more fidelity, but we run it at the national level because we work in DC and we want to be able to tell the story about the state impact. So you see the data there, the direct employment across the state, about 9,100 people, the labor income, the output, and the contribution to the GDP. All the numbers are out there for Idaho specifically. Next slide, please. Then there's something to really be proud of for Idaho. And I apologize, I was in Sandpoint 4 years ago. And somebody pointed out to me I spelled Sandpoint wrong. There shouldn't be a break, but Sandpoint, Idaho, home of Kodiak Aircraft, used to be Quest Aircraft, just up the street. They're a member of ours, been in and out there a few times to see the facility. They are one of the leading manufacturers of turboprop airplanes across the world. Founded kind of quietly in the early 2000s, and getting into the aviation industry is very hard. It's a very high threshold. They made it, and people love their aircraft. They just came out with a second model. So since their founding, they've churned out 319 Kodiak 100s. The one Kodiak 900, it's not that it's a bad aircraft, it's just they just had the first delivery right before New Year's Eve. So we counted it last year, gave them credit, and it worked out there. It's a great aircraft. So for Idaho, manufacturing is also an important component, beyond the flying, beyond the maintaining. So next slide, please. So now I'm going to shift gear just to some broader issues, some questions that always come up. At the national level, just two quick slides. Congress oversees a lot of the aviation system. We're highly regulated. Any changes you want to do, Congress gets to weigh in based on the Interstate Commerce Act and their authorities. This year is a year when Congress will pay attention to aviation and the FAA. Next slide. If you are following aviation debates, this is just an inventory of the things you see. And you mentioned the advanced air mobility. This is an industry that names itself 5-6 different things. Sometimes it's eVTOL, sometimes AAM, sometimes all those things. It is coming, and we need to come up with a regulatory regime. We need to build the infrastructure at the airport, the charging stations, train pilots how to do that, and Congress is very interested in it. And so is the protocol. We're looking at the fallout from the Southwest incident. I'm sure everybody followed that. A lot of things in aviation, they're running on borrowed time. We need money to go into it. So that's going to be a discussion. A lot of attention on environmental issues broadly, and also in GA. Next gen is the modernization of air traffic facilities. We've been at it for 20 years. We need to chart the future. Beyond that, what did we learn? Spectrum is always hard, especially we get more and more work in here, especially with our DoD partners. Spectrum is a finite piece of property. Cybersecurity is a concern. I'm sure as an airport, that's new requirements go down your way from TSA. And then after the Boeing MAX accidents, very tragic. We're looking at how we make aircraft safe. So that's some of the things you're going to see some discussions about. Last 3 slides, just real quick. What are unique things to GA that we expect to be working? We're going to cover the community access, something called EAGLE, and safety. Next slide, please. There we go. So what is general aviation? It's somewhere between the spectrum of the weekend flyer who just loves doing it because they got into aviation when they were a kid. That the high net worth individual or big corporation that fly people around as well. Sometimes people don't like that side of the industry, but it's an important market, and it is really becoming more and more important when we see good news for Boise. It's not happening here, but elsewhere in the country, airlines pulling back on service. The executive that needs to be able to get around, they can get into the smaller communities if airline service is less or it's gone away. But the other components, helicopter, aeromedical work, agricultural spraying, big industry. From our perspective, I think we have just short of 200 airplanes made just for the ag industry. They also do some of the forest spraying, the flight training, bottom left, of course, the Forest Service that I'm sure this room is very familiar with, and then short haul air cargo. Those are just some examples of what we do in general aviation. Next, please. So 2 quick slides here on just air service. This is FAA data, the big airports that account for most of the service across the country. This is the big numbers. You know, we all know 500 or so civil public airports, another 4,500 private, and then the civil public, and then 14,000 private. The next slide, please, shows the network that general aviation can really get into. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I never use build slides. It always gets me in trouble. There we go. So those are the GA airports. That's the axis that we're enabling just on the public side. Why is this important? I think this is a build slide. Click one more, please. Sorry. Yep. Well, you'll see it in the slide deck afterwards. We've seen the airlines pull back. It used to be that 600 communities have commercial service with some regularity. We're not short of 400, 392, I think the slide says. 16 were lost just in the last couple of years. And the ones that retained airline service have gone from frequency. instead of 4 or 5 flights a day, it's now 2 or 3. So we're seeing GA really having an opportunity to fill that space, especially for the people that need to get there, the time crunch, the important delivery. Now challenges ahead. One item that we're working very actively is for the lighter end, the piston powered airplanes. We still burn the same type of fuel that you burn in your car in the mid-80s. We haven't been able to get the lead out of the engines because unlike a car, which is pretty straightforward to make the upgrade, the safety concern has been front and center. So we are working for a transition to get the minute amounts of lead that is in low lead gas out of the system by the end of this decade. There's a commitment to have that done by 2030. Why can't we do it tomorrow? Well, we want to do it safely so that the aircraft stay flying within a lot of things going into it. It's a complex transition. So if anybody ever starts discussion about lead-free aviation system, first of all, we're doing the electrical side, but there's also this broader initiative. Somebody with a very pithy way of naming it, Eliminate Aviation Gasoline Lead Emissions, EAGLE for the shorthand. It's out there and you can find a lot of information out there. It's worked by FAA, EPA, we have the airport community involved, a lot of local stakeholders, the manufacturers, researchers. And we're on a good trajectory. There are 3 promising fuels. We just got to work out the safety concerns, which are always promising. And then last but not least, the regulatory regime provides a baseline for aviation safety. But over the past decade, there's been a lot of work to just ensure that we're educating people. In general aviation, we have somewhat of a lighter touch than the airlines and how to bring home people for training. This is a group, the GA Joint Safety Committee, AOPA is on it. I'm on it, business associations, airports association. We sit down every couple of months with the FAA, look at the accident data, what happened, or the things we've forgotten about, what do we do to lead in the right direction. The trajectory is good, but the accident rate, I think that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Questions?
Does your organization address the pilot shortage and all training, or is that still separate?
We have at time. Going back to Ambassador Stimson, when he matriculated out from us and before he became an ambassador, he helped start a group called Be a Pilot. It was an initiative in the 90s to, last time there was a pilot shortage, happens about every 20 years, it's a generational thing, where he really set a foundation for it. So we ran the program for about 5-10 years until the pilot shortage was over. And now that we're seeing it again, there's a lot of initiatives to bring pilots in there. AOPA is probably more front and center of that in that area. For us, we want engineers, we want mechanics. We have a similar shortage there to get people into the industry. If you look at the demographics of the workforce, the boomer generation is about to start reaching their peak retirement. That means we need to backfill a lot of qualified people in our own ranks, pilots as well.
The FAA funding for airports, and Rebecca, maybe you can answer the question too. Does the towers count all GA aircraft when they count takeoffs and landings at airports?
Oh my, I wish I knew the answer to that. I have to apologize. I can probably call a friend and get an answer for you on that
Do you know
one.
Tower does count, GA takeoffs.
So it doesn't matter, just weight on wheels is a tick, and so that's
it.
Mhm.
Yep, and they segment it too. We get it segmented by military, GA, commercial. They do count them.
Are you here today because the community feels there's either lack of support, or lack of understanding or knowledge of general aviation, or why did the community in Idaho ask you to come out and break the airport commission?
I'll paraphrase several emails back and forth. And it was an interesting having a conversation with the airport commission about general aviation, and with the connection that we have, they called me and I said, absolutely, I'll be here. The Simpson connection. So I have to provide any data information.
So is there a concern that there is a lack of understanding of the general aviation community's needs, or are they not being met, or?
I got the invite. I'd have to ask the local stakeholders to probably fill in why they reached out to me and said it was important to have me provide an overview of general aviation. I wouldn't want to speculate.
I know I'm a general aviation pilot, those military pilot. We have other commercial pilots that are probably also general aviation pilots. And And I feel there's a good sense of support for the GA community. So just curious why they asked you, is there a concern or is it just, hey, let's just continue to have a touch point with airport commissions?
I let them fill in either here or a future meeting, but when I came in and saw the presentation about the airport, I loved seeing the investment being made. So that was good. I often give these presentations locally, general aviation is the other part. And then you especially technology.
Okay. Maybe some of the touch point opportunity to keep that message going. Okay, thank you.
Say something to that too. I think that we as a commission focus a lot on airlines, right? And most of the numbers that Rebecca says is all about airlines and deep enplanements and consumer facility numbers and all that stuff. So I think that it's just you were asked to come from some of the businesses on the Boise airport to make sure that there's a well-rounded discussion. I don't know that there's necessarily a concern at all. From the last month's gentleman who came and talked about wanting more hangar space, there's always that discussion. The airport is growing. We want to make sure that general aviation still has a presence, and I do believe that with all of the development that's going on, that is happening. So I think it's just more of, don't forget about us.
I've given many "Don't Forget About Us" presentations.
Because it does, it's a pretty big economic.
If you look at flying in the system, from an economic perspective, civil aviation, general aviation, 10% of it. Flying in the airspace, we're converging toward about 20%. It's a minority, but still an important.
What do you see as a forecast for the economic outlook for jets, turboprop? It's a bit of a crystal ball question, right?
Very good. The last decade was one of our strongest decades ever. Any one year, $20 to $25 billion in new aircraft sold. Put that in context, Airbus and Boeing, they're in the $50 to $60 billion each. So it's an important part of the aerospace economy. The backlog slide, it was somewhere in there, especially last 3-4 years. It was mentioned earlier, people are traveling differently the last 3-4 years. We're seeing the same kind of shift. Yes, they're still flying on the airlines, but the airlines aren't there the way they used to be. That means that general aviation fills the role. The cargo transportation, a lot of our aircraft are going into cargo. Several new models are specifically built for cargo flying. That's a growth opportunity there. Then a lot of people wanted to do something new with themselves last few years. And learning to fly is just an opportunity. So we've seen a real influx on people wanting to learn how to fly either for a career or for the fun of it. And both of them are good things.
On this trip, are you visiting the other airports in Idaho?
Nope, I am in and out. I will be back in Idaho in a few months though. But for this trip, I'm just here to give this presentation.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Next, we have the opportunity for members of the public to offer comments or ask questions. Anybody who would like to speak? Seeing none. I think anything else from any of the commissioners? I think we could entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we adjourn.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
You're adjourned. Thank you.